All right, well, thanks for joining, everybody. We really appreciate you being here, and we're really excited about what we're going to be delivering in this session around delivering AI-ready data with data products. So you can see we have like two major terms in there. We have AI and AI ready, and then we also have data products. So what are we going to do? We're gonna have to unpack those. These are terms that are out in the industry today. And there's a lot of confusion about, what does this mean? Like, how do I actually implement this? What are some of the challenges other customers are facing? And so I'm the CMO at Dremio. My name's Reed Maloney. We had a great session sort of going through like what are we hearing and seeing in the market today. I talk to analysts and customers every single week. So we've been able to take that and distill into like what are the best practices and trends that we're seeing in terms of both AI ready data and how this term and what we mean by data products are playing a role in helping organizations drive AI ready data. To help us with that, someone who's speaking to many customers across a whole range of industries every single week, getting input and information from the industry in terms of what's going on, is Matt Aslett, the Director of Research and Analytics and Data at ISG. Matt leads the software research and advisory for the analytics and data expertise at Ventana Research, now part of ISG, covering software that improves the utilization of information across business and IT. His focus areas of coverage include analytics, data intelligence, data operations, data platforms, and streaming and events. Matt's specialization is in the operational and analytical use of data and use of AI where enterprises can modernize their approach to accelerate the value realization of technology investments in support of hybrid and multi-cloud architectures. Matt has been an industry analyst for more than a decade and has pioneered the coverage of emerging data platforms, including NoSQL and NewSQL databases, data lakes, and cloud-based data processing. He is a graduate of Bournemouth University. Well, welcome, Matt. It's great to have you here.
No, it's great to
As
be
Matt's
here.
about to jump As Matt's going to jump in here with that intro, we want to know where you guys are on your journey in terms of moving to AI ready data. So we have a poll for you. We're going to pull that poll up. If you could just take 10 seconds, sort of click where you are on the journey, it will help us understand the where the progress is in the market that you have so far. And then we're going to tailor things as we can towards that. Feel free to ask questions at any time in the chat, and we'll be able to get to those throughout the presentation or at the end. So everyone's voting right now. That's outstanding. And you guys, when we see we have some votes in, we're gonna go and flip that. All right. So with that, we're gonna roll into to the presentation with Matt. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Reed. Thank you, everybody, for joining the webinar today, and thank you to Dremio for having us on. So yeah, let's have a look. Oh, they've done. Well, we'll come back to those maybe in terms of the results, but let me continue here. Just briefly introduce you to ISG Software Research and myself. So as Reed mentioned, Ventana Research, which is still actually in the logo up here, was acquired by ISG about a year ago and has effectively now become ISG Software Research. We're in the middle of that transition there. But Ventana Research has been around for 20 years, delivering consulting, advisory, research, education on the software industry sector. As you can see here, we cover about 2,500 software providers. And a lot of, not the only way, but the significant way we deliver that is through what we call our buyer's guides. We delivered 100 of those last year. We will deliver about 100 of those this year. And those are, we put together sort of the key capabilities, the key functionality that enterprises should be looking for in a particular product category. So to give you some context around ISG, because it's one of those companies that, particularly in the software industry, maybe not as well known. It's an industry research and advisory and consulting benchmarking company, has previously been focused predominantly on service providers and enterprises. And obviously the addition of ISG Software Research now adds that software industry focus as well. So across the whole of ISG, we have over 900 blue chip clients. We have more than 75 of the top 100 enterprises are engaging with ISG, and altogether ISG actually influences over $200 billion worth of technology spending in the per year. So even though, particularly in this, as I say, in the software side, maybe not a brand that people have heard of, significant influence over the wider market, and obviously we're working to increase the influence of and the profile of ISG in the software space. So within ISG Software Research, we don't at this point claim to cover the whole market. Obviously, it's a vast market in and of itself. So there's two key areas that we focus on. There's the business-focused expertise and research. That's primarily focused on enterprise applications in areas like customer experience, marketing, HCM, Office of Finance, for example. And then the part of the research area that I'm part of, the IoT and technology focused expertise and research, analytics and data, artificial intelligence, digital business, and digital technology. And I've been an analyst, actually, it's about 17 years now in the data and analytics space, as Reid mentioned, covering lots of the emerging technologies in that time, and increasingly, obviously, focused on analytics and AI, which has now become almost completely pervasive. But one of the interesting things that I'm focused on right now is actually the confluence of these two areas. So we see increasingly enterprises are looking to either build or buy essentially intelligent applications they use to run the business. So they're the sort of things our colleagues in the business focused side of the research house would be looking at. But they're infused with artificial intelligence and analytics. And that really requires seamless integration and processing of diverse AI-ready data. So what do we mean by AI-ready data? We see that AI requires data that is clean, of high quality, it's well organized, and it obviously needs to be compliant with the regulatory standards. So we see these as essential prerequisites really for deploying AI effectively, especially at an enterprise level. Now, the need for good data management is not new, of course, and people have been talking about and evangelizing the need for good data management as it relates to business intelligence for many, many years. Unfortunately, though, despite that, many enterprises find that they still struggle with data that is actually fragmented, it's inconsistent, and it's not easily accessible. As I say, this is not unusual. Even though business intelligence data already requires data that's clean, organized, and compliant, many enterprises still look like the lower half of this slide here. With fragmented, inconsistent, and data that's inaccessible. So what do we see that's different about AI-ready data? And the key issue is really that AI raises the bar and places even greater pressure on enterprises to deliver clean, organized, and compliant data. And the bar has got higher really for multiple reasons. BI, business intelligence, uses data to support decision making by employees. But with AI, we see that enterprises are adopting AI to develop applications and systems, and therefore relying on the data that supports those applications and systems to actually make and automate decisions in real time. Those decisions are also increasingly critical, things like spotting fraudulent activity and delivering customer service. So the risks associated with failure are heightened when those those services are being automated. Also, we see that the use of AI within enterprises is increasingly a C-level concern, or it's board level driven. So if the CEO of the board is driving increased adoption of AI, and they have high expectations about improving efficiency, innovation, and growth, then AI needs to deliver. So this increased enterprise sort of interest in AI is therefore we see a forcing function for organizations to do what arguably they should have been doing for years. And we can get into some of the reasons why they've struggled with that, which is improving data management. And to get into obviously the topic of today's webinar, we see that data products is increasingly the focus of attention as a means of providing the consistency that's required across an enterprise to deliver AI applications. Now, there's multiple ways that we see, AI products, data products as delivering that. The first is transforming data management. We see that through the use of data products, enterprises can embrace decentralized data ownership across the enterprise, but at the same time break down the traditional data silos that exist. And that's done through the federated delivery of centralized data governance and standards. And I'll talk about this, we'll go through to explain how we think this is happening. But one of the key ways is through domain-based data accountabilities. You have data owners, data producers within a particular business department are responsible for their own data, and they're accountable for their own data, and making that available to other parts of the business through self-service access. So the other key area that data products help is to facilitate data sharing between business domains, and there's multiple outcomes of that. We see that it can reduce the friction between data producers and data consumers about understanding the terminology. What do we mean when we talk about a customer, and how do we define that? We can reduce some of that friction. Also reduce friction when data consumers are asking for data projects, and then there are delays, and that causes business challenges. And also it can potentially encourage data democratization to make data available to more people within an organization. And obviously the ultimate goal of this is clearly to accelerate decision making. So we see that data products can help to support providing AI ready data. It's pre-approved, it's pre-prepared, it's stamped as being ready to use across the organization. There are agreed business semantics and other processes in place to improve the trust in the data that people are accessing as data products. And altogether, those things can hopefully help organizations reduce time to insight and obviously action. So what do we see is that by 2027, we assert that more than 6 in 10 enterprises will adopt technologies to facilitate the delivery of data as a product as they adapt their cultural and organizational approaches to data ownership in the context of data mesh. Now, to be clear on that, I'm not suggesting that everyone adopting data products is also adopting data mesh, or indeed that data mesh is required for data products. But we do see that the two are closely related. As we go through the description here, I think you'll see how domain-oriented data ownership and federated as opposed to distributed governance, which are another two key aspects of data mesh, are very much aligned with and support the delivery of data products. So what exactly do I mean by data products, data as a product? The industry is and always has been kind of awash with multiple different terms related to data, many of which can be quite vague, especially when you first come across them, or they have disputable definitions. We see different vendors and enterprise users using different terms, some different terms to mean the same thing. And it can lead to confusion. And I think in particular in relation to this topic, we see different vendors and enterprises using terms like data as a product, data marketplace, and data as a service. Sometimes these are used almost interchangeably, but we do see them as different things. And I wanted to define what I mean when I use these terms as we go through the presentation here. It's quite possible you might agree with our definitions, and that's fine. I just wanted to be clear about what I mean. So what we see is that data as a product is the process that is used by data owners to develop a data product. And that data product can be shared internally across an enterprise via a data marketplace, or externally with partners, suppliers, or customers via data as a service. And I'm very much aware that I still haven't defined what a data product is. We're talking about some of the terminology here. So let's get into that. So what is a data product? Well, the data product, put simply, is the outcome of a data initiative. And it could take multiple forms. So it could be a custom application. It could be an AI model or algorithm. It could be a business intelligence dashboard, for example. I think more typically what we see is that the outcome is going to be the equivalent of what we traditionally think of as a data mart. So it's a domain specific data set. But the key point here is not the data product is not defined by what it is, but actually how it's developed and delivered. And so how do we think that data products should be developed? Well, we could say that the defining characteristic of a data product is that it's been developed as a product. And I know that's self-fulfilling. So let's explain what we mean by that. We see that data product managers in a business domain, it could be finance, marketing, sales, customer service, for example, they're responsible for managing the data generated by the applications in their business domain and for making it available to others across the organization. In order to do so effectively, data product managers need to be thinking about those other domains across the organization. It's not just people who consume the data that they produce, but actually customers of the data. And it's this, actually thinking about them as customers is critical to the definition of data products. And that means that data owners should be applying product thinking in the development process to ensure that they are aware of the requirements of those customers. What do they need that data for? What are they trying to do with it? How can then the data owner deliver that data product to them in a way that fits their needs? And they therefore need to understand, they need to do requirements gathering to understand how that resulting data product will be used. And also we think that an important part of the puzzle here is developing data products with product versioning and change tracking to ensure that customers are kept up to date as the data products evolve, to ensure that they are on the latest version. They understand, when that was updated, by whom, and for what purpose. And so there's a lot of, this is what we think about as being developed by a product. As a product. And in addition to being developed as a product, we see that it needs to be delivered as a reusable asset. Whatever form it's delivered in, it should be delivered in a way that can be discovered and consumed by others across the business, as I said, on a self-service basis. In order to do so, as with any product you buy, it needs to be delivered with a description of its purpose. What is it for? How should people use it? Some recommendations about its purpose to ensure that customers are using the product appropriately and understand the data that's being delivered through that product. Data customers should also be able to identify whether the data product is free for them to use, or whether they need approval for that, or whether it requires indeed a fee, especially obviously if it's something that's being delivered externally. And also, how are they going to access that? Is it available as a download? Is it, they consume it as a service? Or, is it a subscription model where it is going to be constantly updated? So there needs to be some information delivered to the customer in relation to that. And also, clearly, if you're thinking about, well, any product, particularly data products, you need to understand what are the quality expectations? What's the data quality level of the product initially, and what is the producer committing to in terms of the level of quality that the customer can expect, but also service level KPIs as well. As I said, how often is it going to be updated? What kind of availability should they expect from that product? And the way we see that increasingly being delivered, this is somewhat optional if you look at the way people are thinking about data products today, but we do see an increasing focus on data contracts. The data contracts are not, I guess, contracts in a legal sense, but what they are is commitments related to the data product. So they may be commitments related to the level of data quality, as I said, the KPIs, which so they're defined by the data owner as they produce the data product, and they provide an agreement there then between the owner and the consumer about the nature of the product and what they can expect from it. There should also be a description of the data product, as I said, not just in terms of the business definition, a description, what it's for, but also a definition of the data structure, the data formats, the meaning of the data itself. So there's no disagreements about what that data means. There should also be information about the licensing terms and usage limitations, in particular, what not to do with the data, especially sort of perhaps making it available to third parties. And then also, as I said, some business context and documentation that enables the user to understand not just the nature of the data, the definition, the structure, the format, and the meaning, but also the business context. How this is used, what the business aspects and terms that the data relates to. And then also, and again, we see this as being somewhat optional right now, but we do see that it makes sense, and we'll see more of this. If you go and buy a product, I should say, today, consumers of products are instantly asked to give ratings, give comments, give feedback. And we expect the same thing to become pretty standard in relation to data products. Those consumers should be able to provide feedback, including ratings and comments, but also potentially to request modifications to that data. As part of thinking about the consumer as a customer, the customer should be able to request improvements if they can see where there are improvements to be made, and also the potential to just request entirely new data products. Of course, you may know that a business unit is likely to have some data you're looking for. The data products that are available may not necessarily fit precisely what you need. And so, the ability to request the development of new data products is important as well. So the development of any product, relies on a complex supply chain of components, and data products are, of course, no exception. So in addition to data product development, data product classification, consumption and management capabilities, we see that the development and delivery of data products relies on native or integrated data ops functionality as well, including things like development and testing of data pipelines that obviously support with the data product being the ultimate outcome of those pipelines. Orchestration, obviously, of data in relation to multiple data pipelines that are required, and also things like data observability, especially as it relates to identifying the quality and the freshness of that data that is delivered through the data product, and things like data governance and data catalog functionality as well. And then, as we do also see, is important enabling functionality that supports the overall delivery of data products. So things like data federation, data curation capabilities. Clearly, data sharing is fundamental, and data discovery in terms of identifying the data products that are available across the organization. So we see, again, we assert that through 2007, enterprises will increase their strategic focus on data catalogs as the intersection of data production and data consumption, enabling self-service creation and sharing of data products based on trusted and governed data sources. We see that, especially given that data catalogs have been widely adopted to serve as an environment for the governance and discovery of data already, they're a natural focus for the delivery of data products. And of course, we could do a whole nother webinar just focused on the evolution of data catalogs, but it's briefly worth touching on how we see those evolving and where data products fit into that. So what is a data catalog? It's essentially an organized inventory of enterprise data assets across an organization. Now, the first generation of data catalogs were very much focused on getting all your data in one place and enabling search-based discovery and access of that data. So very much like a physical library, put everything in one place, and then obviously enable people to find what they're looking for within that environment. For multiple reasons, putting all your data in one place is less than ideal, or at least than practical. And again, we could go into a whole other webinar on that. But what we quickly saw, therefore, is increased attention on capabilities such as virtualization, federation, query acceleration to facilitate access to data across an enterprise. So less like a library and more like the internet in terms of enabling access to data wherever it may reside. At the same time, of course, just about every data management vendor on the planet added cataloging capabilities to their products, to the extent that we see that many enterprises end up with multiple catalogs, and you've got catalogs of catalogs and multiple layers of catalogs. So it's important here to think about those serve a specific purpose. If you have a catalog related to a specific data management tool, it serves the purpose in enabling the discovery and access to data served by that tool. What we're seeing is that through the emerging industry standards like open table formats, including Apache Iceberg, there's an increased potential for a catalog of catalogs. So compatibility across the enterprise and across different tools and technologies that are deployed across the enterprise for data management, and delivering metadata-driven access to data wherever it resides. So what we're essentially seeing is the data catalog evolved towards being what I've described as a data intelligence platform. It delivers an abstracted and a holistic view that enables enterprises to understand how, where, when, and why data is both produced and consumed across the organization via a federated environment in which individual business domains have autonomy and accountability for managing their own data production, but do so in the context of generating data products, as we've described, that can be discovered and consumed by others. So that's a bit of a whirlwind tour through data products, data catalogs, data as a product, etc. So I'm more than happy to take questions as we come back at the end here. But for now, thanks very much for being on this webinar, and I'll hand over to Reed and we'll come back later.
Well, Matt, I'm actually going to ask you one question here and tee it up
Sure.
for the group. As you see organizations go and start to adopt data products as a way to have AI-ready data and to deliver, we'll say, innovation with their data more quickly, what structures are you seeing between, what's centralized and what's decentralized, and what are you also seeing between the roles? Like, what are the key roles, and are roles evolving?
Sure.
And where do they live within the organization from sort of I'm not saying there's necessarily a best practice yet, but just sort of
No, exactly. And
what
I
you're
was going to
seeing as
say,
this emergence.
yeah, and you use the term that emergence and evolving. It definitely is emerging and evolving. But I do see, as I said, we're not necessarily talking here about governance of data being distributed throughout the organization. That's definitely not what enterprises are looking for. There's still a role for centralized, policy making in relation to governance and standards. But with the, emerging, products and technologies, data catalog, data product platforms, and, some of the capabilities I talked about, there is the ability to then, to more so than ever, federate ownership of that data and control of that data and the actual implementation of those, the governance policies and standards at a domain level. So you then see organizations evolving to having people within that domain, and I think that the role, especially the job titles are evolving here. But we're essentially talking about data engineers who own that data and are accountable for that data within the business domain. So very much a federated model of responsibility and accountability for the data, but still with that centralized control over governance, and obviously things like data privacy, regulatory requirements, all those kind of things still need to be managed at a central, through a central organization. So, I think obviously we do see that enterprises need, well, some more than others need to adapt to that. Some particularly large organizations have been perhaps adopting a more federated approach over the years, but it is definitely a work in progress across the industry.
Yeah, we actually, with the conversations I've had, I've seen something really similar where either those engineering resources are directly in the line of business, like you were talking about, or they're in the central team, but they're dedicated to the line of business,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And it's like there's almost a dotted line one way or the other in terms of the groups that are doing the data management within the department or the line of business, meaning if they live in the line of business, they have a dotted line for governance and data stewardship for back to the central team. And
Hmm.
if they live
Yeah.
in the central team, they have a dotted line to the business team for delivery and timelines and SLAs and all of that back to the business. And in some cases, I've also seen the business funding those headcount, those resources within the central team. So they're transferring budget actually into the central team and saying, I'm going to fund these resources, but those are my resources. But you're the expert
Hmm.
because you've been managing resources like this for a long time. So you're the expert at managing them and being able to develop them and so forth. So I don't have to build, hire a VP and have all this. You already have all that. And so we've
Yeah.
seen those two models emerge with the customers we're talking to. Um, as a setup on that, if we go to the next slide, what we're seeing about why this empowerment is so powerful and why so much of this, like again, data products in general need to be aligned to people with domain expertise. For me, we do this internally at Dremio. I'm the marketing lead. We have had to take, individuals like or data analysts and ensure that they're being able to take on some of what engineering work is required because we know when that data is right or not. We know what a production level data asset is for us. And so like when we want to create something, we're not just doing it to process data. We don't just sit there, hey, we want to create another table, we want to create another data asset, yet another data asset. Like the data asset is there for a specific reason. And that's really the genesis behind the data product, which is you are outcome down versus data up in your approach. And there's obviously that has to meet in the middle. And we have a slide sort of showing you what we see in terms of how that's coming together to meet in the middle so that you get the best of what the data teams can do and you get the best of what the business teams can do. All right. And so for us, we really see this as agility, right? They're able to move much more quickly. In general, we see BI and AI projects delivered 10 times faster, and we'll talk about why that happens. We see data quality improve, and the reason is the people looking at and managing the data understand the data. They understand the semantics of the data because they're the ones that say, look, I have to produce this report. I look at it every day. I look at it every hour. It's got to be up to date. If something's wrong, I know right away. And then they can go in and work with the teams to help troubleshoot and then scale. And I'm actually going to talk about that on an upcoming slide, but this is just going to deal with ticket overload, right? There are so many tickets going to data teams that it's just honestly it's not possible to keep up. And as more if central teams continue to say, well, we provide you a free resource, that resource will not be we'll say leveraged appropriately in the highest ROI framework. And so you get this odd dynamic of like you're working on a lot of actually low priority, highly urgent asks like the loudest person wins versus you're working on the most important highest ROI asks, and that is a function of the setup and scale in terms of a lot of where a lot of organizations are as sort of this data innovation curve, especially with AI, has just flipped it's not like we weren't on a journey, but it's flipped very quickly to like this is the primary thing of a way we're going to drive competitive advantage as a company. And so it's that delta has made a big difference. We go to the next slide. And so what's that doing, right? Despite best efforts, these teams are producing the bronze, the silver, the gold layer. They're doing all the processing for everybody, for every line of business, for every group. And what ends up happening is you just bottleneck. And so the central teams are doing their absolute best, but you have these really, we'll say, really talented resources that are doing a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting on a daily basis to try to get these teams happy, but the teams are still unhappy. So it's like a lose-lose scenario. that we're trying to, that the market, I would say, not us, but the market is trying to break. They're trying to break this scenario because it's painful for everybody. So you go to the next slide. What really sets this up is the desire to get to innovation between I got the analyst and the scientist trying to drive a BI or AI project, and I have the data engineer trying to get the data that they need. So what ends up happening is, look, hey, I got this project. I don't have the data I need, so I have to go and say I need a different data set. That's really how all of this looks. And so with that data set that I want to create, I'm going to cut a ticket, and that ticket's going to have a set of requirements, and all of a sudden it's going to hit the engineers. Well, if I have all those teams, and all those teams have a lot of demands on them, and all of them have a backlog. I know my team does. Like our analytics backlog is enormous. And the advantage is we can complete projects about 10 times faster than other teams. So with one resource, we're moving really quickly, but we're not, we're still have a backlog. There's never, you can always do more. And so what we find from our customers is that if it's just one change, like I want a new calculated column, or I want one more column to this data set as a factor to evaluate whether I'm going to build another feature in a model, something like that, that takes a week. If I want another data source involved to get a column, let's say it's from the product combining with customers, which is I would say a relatively common one, or something else from the core operations of, let's say, an energy company, in terms of the way they're measuring throughput, and I want to combine that over with a finance level revenue models. Like that takes a month. And so the biggest challenge is once that data comes back to the user, it's inherently wrong. And that's the next bit here, because they don't have the domain knowledge to know the next question to ask. And so you go back to the analyst or data scientist who's like, oh no, I actually need this now too. And even if it was delivered correctly, like it's perfectly to spec, the person themselves, the analyst or the scientist, they don't know what they need until they see it and start playing with it again, and then they're back in the loop. And that's what is making things take so long. People are like, how could it be 80% of the time? How is that possible? This is what's happening in terms of what makes it possible. So you go to the next slide. So this is what everyone's trying to break right now. And so this is a problem that we've been solving, and we'll say, solving better and better and better as we continue to progress our technology. So Dremio in the past has been something that almost all of our customers have used to unify their analytics across legacy systems and cloud systems and lakes and RDBMSs. Okay. And with the advent of what we've been doing with Iceberg, is we've really now enabled business units to be able to take on their, we'll call it their data mart, which we'll talk about as a domain data product. This is the current, you say, the future version of the data mart, that takes care of all the problems that existed with data marts. And then we view those as, physical tables. So those are purple on our slide. And then if you look at the green ones, these are virtual. And so these virtual data products are aligned to the BI projects and the AI projects. And then we do some IP in the middle to help sure they run really fast. And that we'll talk about there. So this is how we see a lot of our organization structuring, where a lot of the standard ingest, a lot of the work on ingest, and all that's happening from the central team. Some of them may apply a schema that may also happen in the central team, but then they're trying to push data management, but in a highly governed and also central policy enforcement way into the businesses. And this creates a win-win, because now the business, if they want to move faster, they can fund more. They have the ownership to go do so. They can also increase the governance of their data because they know the data really well. And the central team can focus on, hey, like this is the next data project we were trying to work on, because they're bottleneck too, trying to innovate. And they're just stuck working on tickets. And we have a bunch of polls we've done on LinkedIn to verify that. But about 60 to 70% of most engineers feel like the time they're spending is on a set of relatively undifferentiated work, up to 80%. across the board. So if we go to the next slide. So this is what we were talking about before, like how do things shift? We still see most central teams today, and this is all from what we're seeing from customers. This is not necessarily where they are, but this is generally where we see that they want to go and who's doing what, and I'll explain. So the central team's coming in, they're still ingesting data and they're owning the raw data loads that are getting it in. Okay. And then what we're seeing is that there's this concept of, we'll say the analytics engineer or a data engineer that's aligned to the domain. This is what Matt was talking about earlier when I asked him a question, that is either in a central team that's aligned to a line of business or is in that line of business. All right. And they are creating the data, typically one data product, which you call a domain data product, for each department. And then within that department, they're creating a set of virtual data products. This is the analyst and the data scientist here in the gold layer who are doing that virtually. So we're not over processing data that we don't need to. And then so a company like Dremio, we intelligently accelerate that gold layer. And so each of those are production level assets. So even the virtual data product is a production level asset. It has to be managed like that, and it's tied to a BI report or it's tied to a model. Those are the most common ways that we see that. And so it's really important for organizations to understand, like, how do I, who's then responsible? How's it governed? How's the data updating? If something happens, what do we do? Like, what does that analyst do when they see a problem in the report? What do they own? And then what is owned downstream? Okay. So go to the next slide. So this is how we look at Dremio overall. So if you look at the bottom, as I talked about, we have a whole set of sources that we support. We add the most value when organizations move to a iceberg-centric view. That doesn't mean they can't have data in other sources, but based on work we've done around being the fastest and having the best price performance for our SQL engine for Iceberg, we add more value there. There's work that we're doing around this acceleration tier, which I talked about, where we do this intelligently. That is going to continue to get more and more and more autonomous. Because again, if you're pushing things to the business, we need to start thinking about how do we have more autonomous data management so that the business can continue to do more. And so this is how it starts to look. And you see Matt talking about that catalog. We do have an enterprise Iceberg catalog. Okay, that is both doing work as a meta store, but we also do automatic data optimization. All right, so as the tables land, we'll optimize those tables automatically. We have spaces where we can have different domains. So you could divide that within the product and say like, okay, this is my marketing space, and I'm going to have a domain data products in there, and then I'm going to have my virtual data products. And then we have governance controls, fine-grained governance controls to allow reusability and have these shared. But you can even get down to fine-grained at the row and column level, including things like masking. So you instead of the old way in a data mart where you would say, okay, marketing's got their own warehouse, they're doing that in a CDW or something like that. Sorry, like a cloud data warehouse, and that's now just them, and it's very hard to govern, and there's no visibility of this. These are fully observable all the way back into the central team. So you're just solving these problems that existed before. And then for us, because of this interoperability that Matt was talking about, and that's coming through the catalog, we see that happening with Iceberg. So we feel with Iceberg being the default table standard now in the market, and that we see all customers having some view or some path into a Iceberg lakehouse as the architecture by which they will power all of their analytics and AI. You then have this interoperability center, which is the catalog. And so from us, in this case, you could interop and say, well, for this particular use case on supply chain, I want to use Spark. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, go use Spark. It's Iceberg. It's your data. By the way, it's your metadata. Everything we do is powered by open source. So it's your metadata. It's your storage. And so you have this no lock-in, complete interoperability. So different departments can choose different tools, and they're all still governed. And those are all the critical components of making something like a data product and moving things, we'll say, into a more federated model actually work for the organizations that are our customers and the organizations that we're talking to right now. So we go to the next slide. Here's one of them. So RWE is the largest energy producer in Germany. This is their slide. And so what I like to highlight, and the only thing I changed on this slide is I put sort of the gold box around the business here, which is you can see the set of tools that they're using to go and put data into their systems and to load their data. But when it comes down to, hey, where are we going to get the value from the data? They align that to their different business units. And that's where they bring Dremio in. And so we're enabling them to build those domain data products. And then within that, right, they're building all of the virtual data products that are aligned to the outcomes. So Matt, thanks for that. In the early part, the outcomes they're trying to drive is what starts that first. So again, if you remember the left to right chart, the left is you're still bringing it up to the point where the business takes it over, but that has moved backwards from where it was. It's moved to the left. And now the business is taking on the data requirements earlier in the process, but they start with what do I actually need to deliver the outcome first? And then they take that back to what do we actually have to process to make that happen versus we just process everything. And that's leading to a lot of efficiency within the teams that are moving to that. Oh, okay. And I know we're looking at the poll, most people here today are either in the process of implementing to get to AI ready data, or they are just learning about it. But we did have at least one individual on that was implemented into multiple lines of business. And so it would be great to see exactly what their process has been. Every time we talk to customers, we learn a bit more and we try to pattern match for everybody else that's in the market today. We go to the next slide. And so where are we really different? It's about we're going to create a really simple data product experience. We're going to intelligently accelerate them, and that everything we're doing in this hybrid lakehouse for the business, as I said, we support both data sources that are on-prem, whether you're on-prem or whether you're planning to repatriate, that's totally fine. Or if you're in the cloud and the cloud is your future in terms of looking at a data, one hyperscaler or one data platform, or looking at multiple data platforms, we can work across that. And this is what we're bringing to customers from a capability differentiation perspective. Next slide. So on the data product experience, we're looking at how do you create, consume, and govern these data products. And so there's a lot that goes into this. And we've broken it out by all the different features as part of the jobs to be done by both really this domain engineer and then also that data analyst, data scientist. So if you think about things like initially search and discovery, I got to find the data, right? That's got to be really easy. But then I also have to go and be able, if something breaks or I need to, go back and look at governance, I got to have data lineage. So that's at the bottom. I'm just taking a few things here. There's obviously a lot of work that's been done around CI/CD and usage monitoring in this overall space, and making that easier and easier and easier is a big commitment from Dremio to our customers to bring this all together into one holistic experience. Okay, that's what we've been hearing in terms of, hey, I got a piece here, a piece here, a piece here. We're just really continuing to wrap that and make this easier and easier and easier and easier to do. So it's easier to build them, it's easier to govern them, right? Which is where you can run into challenges and skill set today. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, one of the things that's really unique about Dremio is once in this case, we're going to be talking about virtual data products, are created, if you have the data virtualized and then you're running the query and you're going back and maybe you're doing full table scans, that could get really slow. And we want to avoid that from happening. So what have we done? We allow the business in a governed manner to go and create these virtual data products. Okay. They're then connecting things like their Tableau to then run a dashboard, which might connect to a whole set of tables, right? These are, again, all virtual tables. And then what we end up doing is we look at the query patterns and we will tell you, hey, we're going to materialize just what matters. So in some cases, you may be doing a join across multiple tables. And we say, well, you know what? If you just aggregated this one column, which is the main thing that you're doing across the different the different tables you're querying, that is what will accelerate your query from something that's taking minutes to something that's going to go less than a second. Okay, and so we recommend those to you. We say, hey, based on your query patterns, here's what we think you should materialize. Then what happens is after we've materialized that, our query engine's smart enough that it will rewrite the query on the fly. So the dashboard just keeps querying the virtualized data product. It is totally transparent. And in the background, the query engine and the materialization we're making are doing all the work. So it's completely transparent. And so that allows the business to go and move quickly and build in a governed manner. And then also get the performance that would typically have to go back to the central team, where the central team then gets another ticket. Hey, will you please create this, next level aggregation so this can work? You're then waiting in that loop that we talked about earlier, and there's no self-service at that point. You lose all of that agility benefit. And so you have to have a technology like this that can intelligently accelerate off of virtual data products, or the business will be bottlenecked and you're back into, I got to hire, an more, I can't hire, honestly, you can't hire the number of data engineers required for what the business are trying to do today. And this is all unique to Dremio. All right, next slide. We are powered by open source. We're the co-creators of Apache Arrow, which is the technology underpinning the Dremio SQL query engine. We've written the book on Iceberg, the Iceberg Definitive Guide by O'Reilly. We've contributed a large amount of content into the community. We were the co-hosts of the Iceberg Summit, the first one that happened in May this year. And so we're also really focused on the Polaris catalog. So it's now Apache Polaris incubating. And we see that just like we saw Iceberg becoming the default standard, we see the Apache Polaris, incubating becoming the default standard for catalogs for Iceberg Lakehouses, which again is rapidly becoming the default architecture for the AI era in terms of both AI and analytics overall. And so we are contributing our catalog, which is open, which is also has an open core to it called Project Nessie. We're contributing Project Nessie into, or we plan to. It's an Apache project, so they have to say yes, we're accepting the code as that comes in from a commits perspective. But our plan is to do that because we don't want catalog sprawl. That's what Matt was talking about. We want everything to come together, and so we have that core area of interoperability for you guys to be able to work off of. And if we do, once we do that, Polaris is going to be, we'll say leap forward. And then with everything else in the community oriented on that, and with it being an area of development, plus all of the vendors and the entire ecosystem. That's the word I was looking for. The entire ecosystem builds around that very quickly. That's what makes it so powerful as an interoperability hub. And then it is a community-backed project as an Apache project. And so it's something that's governed in the right way, and you can trust that it's open source backed by a community instead of, as I'm sure some of you have seen, open source that's backed by a vendor. And that's why we think it's going to ultimately be the default catalog in the space. All right, next slide. So with that, as you move with Dremio in terms of powering your analytics and AI in the language of business, we're going to help you move and deliver those BI and AI projects 10 times faster. We're going to help lower your costs. We talked about over-processing, but we also are consistently the lowest cost way to deliver analytics. Most of our customers are significantly more than 50% savings compared to other solutions they're using today. And then, as I just mentioned, we have this hybrid and open deployment model. So it's really flexible to meet you where you are and also be there for where you're going. And that's been these are the three items that our customers continue to come back to us. That's been driving our growth in the market. And so we're evolving with the market too, as there's more and more demand to go and say we want to decentralize, not just from virtualization and intelligently accelerating on virtualization to enable self-service. We want the business to start moving and actually doing more data management and taking on data products. We've been moving in that direction as well to help support what the organizations and our customers want overall. So with that, Matt, I know we have about 5 minutes here for questions to take on, and we can jump into that. I also have another question for you, depending on what we're getting from the audience as well. So I got one from Kevin here, and I'll hit that because that came in. So reflections are materializations. Um, They are, so there is not a materialized view, as I was talking about. We will do a materialization. It won't be a mapping one-to-one of a view that's been created. Okay. It may, again, as I said, just be one column. It might be a couple columns. And so we're intelligently saying, here's what we think you need to materialize. And we do that behind the scenes, and we do that in Iceberg. Okay. Then the SQL engine will rewrite the query on the fly, transparent to the user. So if the user is still querying the same, we'll be still querying the same views, which are increasingly virtual data products based on how they're managed, owned, and it'll often be a set of views. Then they will go back and call those materializations, and that all happens in a transparent manner. So there's a lot baked into that overall technology, and that's why we talk about it as intelligent acceleration. We want it to just feel transparent as it happens, and done so in a highly efficient way. That's part, as you can see with the slide I have up today, that's part of what saves our customers a lot of money, is because they're getting that sort of extract or cube level performance, but they're not having to deal with the pain and we'll say many governance challenges related to extracts. So you don't need to use any extracts when you use a tool like Dremio. All right, and you also need to process cubes. Okay, so we're just going to go and materialize what matters in that case to help you achieve the performance you want. Okay, George Willis, thank you. If catalogs, so I'm going to let Matt, you get this one. If catalogs are king, then data federation is the enabling technology for stitching heterogeneous data sources together into a fabric. GraphQL Federation is an enabling technology under heavy adoption for both exploration and operationalization of federated views with curated stitching data. How is, oh, okay, it's actually a Dremio question. How is Dremio adopting and leveraging GraphQL and GraphQL Federation, or is there another approach for data federation? The very direct answer to your question that we'll have to get back to you on is I don't know what our plans are specifically around GraphQL. We have integrations with a set of data sources and the ones that are most popular by our customers. And we build those integrations and maintain those integrations. And so customers are federating directly with Dremio, okay, in terms of us making the query. So what they do is they'll go and play with the data virtually. All right. If they write a query to a table they've created, which is often, a connection of multiple sources that are out there, then what will happen initially is the query will run and it will get passed through into the systems, and then we pull that back and return it. Because that can be slow, right? That's where the intelligent acceleration kicks in. And so we see what we end up doing is, again, we will materialize what should be materialized. And then the report dashboard will still continue to query what's done virtually, and then we will go and pull that back up. So sort of similar answer to what I gave to Kevin, but you had something specific on GraphQL Federation, and that's just one off the top of my head I don't know about. It's not something I've heard the customers I talk to bring up, so it hasn't been an issue within the deals that I've been involved in.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think that the situation you described is most typical. We see a lot of data platform vendors have created their own federation capabilities to date, but certainly we do see an increasing amount of focus on GraphQL and some vendors adding that into their either adding it into their platforms or integrating with it. So we are seeing increasing demand for that, but it's still relatively I'd say still emerging would be the correct way to describe it.
Well, that's great. Well, then, George, thanks for that question, and we'll let you know. It's good to know that that's something that you're seeing more of too, Matt. And for us to, I'm sure our engineering team is well aware of what's happening there. Okay, I know we're a minute over, and so I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. Thanks for the great questions, George. I'll get back to you. And Matt, really a pleasure to have you on and share what you've been seeing in the market and your definition of data products and why customers are going there as a way to have AI ready data in their organizations.
No, pleasure. Thanks very much for having us. Great.
Okay, cheers. Bye. Thanks
Thanks
all.
all.